If you are skipping the review, the dream, and the decide phases, then all you're doing is repeating your habits week after week after week. It is not about the do phase. The do phase is where you write down the decisions you made in the reviewing of your life, the dreaming, and then the deciding, the fastest and easiest way to get there. Those are the real life-changing steps.
Welcome to Hyperfocus and High Performance with Christine Howe, where we explore how you can work with your brain, build your dreams, and live on purpose with more clarity, creativity, and presence. Welcome back, Bekah. I'm so glad that you're here. We get to talk today about the Think Time Framework, Dream, Decide, Do, and Review. And we were looking back at what that episode covered, and we both agree that we want to start off with talking about cortisol and what I call the cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline, the only way I knew to live for 35 years.
Yeah.
What?
And me for at least the same amount of time. Maybe I would round that up to about 40 maybe for me. So yes,
Yeah.
I agree. It's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think that is where I am likely to get some Me Too's in my lovely audience of some of the most amazing people I've ever met are in our Think Time community. And despite caring well for others and despite being able to overcome immense obstacles in their lives, sometimes the stress that is on the shoulders when people are coming into the membership, it's just unbearable. And it's emotional, it's physical, it's confusion. I don't know how to make any of this work. It's emotional, like what's mine, what's somebody else's. This hurts. I don't know how to handle this. There are so many layers to being at your personal peak performance. And, take them one at a time through the membership and overtime. But when people are coming in, I think stress is the biggest one word descriptor of how they're feeling. I feel stressed or overwhelmed. I think overwhelmed, another one. What do you see as people are coming in?
It's a big question. Yes, I agree. I see the overwhelm. I see the stress. I see we talked about this last episode. I see this a little bit in the hopelessness sometimes. Like they're not sure that like they've given up believing that there actually could be a better way. So sometimes they stop even trying. And so they stop trying to find a better way to do it. And they just settle into, I guess this is just what life looks like. I guess life is just hard and it's stressful and it's tiring and it's overwhelming. And the joy that I had maybe as a young person or the pleasure, the happiness I got out of life, like that's past now. That's all in the past. And so my job now is just to keep working. I think that that's another thing we see sometimes is people feel like I can't stop because if I stop, I won't be able to start again. The only way sometimes people know how to keep going, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience too, is just stay in momentum. Just stay in that, if you can picture that like hamster wheel image, if they get out, how would they ever have the energy to start again? And so they better just keep moving. And taking time to do a reflective process in the midst of that can feel a little scary and overwhelming. And so that, I think that sometimes that is one of those things that would help make people even not want to try. But what's so cool is I watch people come in, and this isn't like a magic pill kind of solution. This doesn't make everyone's stress go away. I will say that what I see over time is actual identity level transformation, because it's a process, and the process is gentle and it's kind. And that's one of the things I love about it. So people show up and they're in this overwhelmed stress state, but by taking, even if it's just 1 hour a week, to show up for themselves, to calm down for a few minutes, because that's what I watch people do. They come in overwhelmed, stressed, they're in their go. And we literally start the weekly calls with deep breaths and just a minute to breathe. And I watch myself, I take some deep breaths. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, my shoulders are up by my ears. Let me lower those down a little bit. Oh, hold on, my neck, I need to stretch for a minute. I feel settled in my body. And so that process, people appreciate that so much. So now it just became something we do every week because it changes the tone. And so that's number one. It's just a minute where people learn to relax. Then the whole call itself is just time that they've carved out for themselves. And then what happens is a couple things. People start to just be able to they start to be able to untangle, and it's not as scary as they thought. And they start to be able to get on that transformational journey piece. And it does take some time. It is not an overnight thing. But that's what I love about being able to offer people that consistency and that regularity of being able to show up. And if they miss a week, no shame, just come back the next week. Like it's okay. If you need to do your think time hour by yourself one week, that's fine. And then you just come back when you're ready, come back the next time. Most people do show up every week, but if you can't, that's okay. And so I think that's the other thing. A lot of times people are used to a system or a program where there's a little bit of guilt or shame if they can't commit, and if they can't do it all the way. This is take what you like and leave the rest, and be here if you can, and be here because you want to. There's nothing else. There's no other attachments there. So I think that helps start to spill over into people's lives.
On that note, one of my favorite moments to back that up is in the quarterly session. One person could make it for 10 minutes, and they came and they did 10 minutes of work. And they were like, sorry, I got to go. And they were like, but that was the best 10 minutes ever. Like, it was just awesome.
That's amazing.
That's what I love to say. I'm like, if you can just do 5 minutes of big picture thinking, it can transform an entire 3-month period. But you've got to get into that space of zooming out and seeing the big picture. And when was the last time you said, over the next 90 days, what's my dream, or what are my priorities? What am I going to need to prune? So yeah, and I love that we do start when you were talking about the breathing, that's bringing in that mind-body connection. And that's something that I think 15 years ago I worked with brain injured patients, and that was the one thing that I did with a group of people who had brain injuries to help them heal. And so think about that with ADHD or stress, or whatever you're bringing into the room, whatever you have or whatever you want to deal with. I think we've all got the stress piece and the busy, distracting world piece that's going on. Getting more oxygen to your brain, getting more blood flow to your brain. It is so simple, but it's so transformative. And I say the same thing. I think I started a call the other day. I entered stressed and I was like, okay, let's breathe. And then by the end, I was like, okay, here we are. We're in our body. That mind body connection, it is not to be underestimated. And we use the body to shift the mind, and we use the mind to shift the body, both in the membership. And that back and forth brings healing and growth. And someone else went through a first trial not long ago, and you'll remember this, but he gave feedback. He was like, it was like a guided yoga session mixed with like CrossFit for the brain. I was like, that's not it. So we kind of go through it. It's like a cycle of moving through. It's research-based, just like you would trust a trainer to bring you through all the muscles of your body. This is an attempt at getting to the whole brain. And of course, that's going to be somewhat of a euphemism for reality, because the brain is so complex and we're only discovering how complex it is. But it's the best effort that I think is on the market right now of traveling through the whole brain while making plans. And so do you want to introduce the framework and how we do it?
Yeah. Well, I know that I think on the last episode, you probably did an overview of what it looks like. What I thought I could bring that would be like a little bit of a different spin on it is how we actually do it in the membership. And so we actually start at the end, which is really cool. So it's a dream, decide, do, review process. But every week when we show up on a call, if we're doing, say, a weekly time frame, we actually start with the review process after we do our like deep breaths and kind of like come out of whatever the work day or whatever we're in, we get into that space. We start with a review, and that's so powerful because there's so many reasons, but one of them is just that it allows you to gain knowledge and from your own experience. It allows you to kind of reflect on where you just were and what's working and what's not working. I love asking the gratitude question. What are we thankful for? It allows me to come into the present and go like, oh yeah, what am I thankful for today? If I didn't think about that yet, if I've been complaining all day or busy or not, what am I actually thankful for? And so there's some consistency there. And it allows you to kind of get into a mindset of like, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I've been. So now it allows me to start to think ahead because I acknowledge the near past and I acknowledge the present. and then I can jump into the future. And so it's a really cool thing. So after we finish the review process, we move right into dreaming. And it's just a really fun thing that most people don't spend a lot of time on. I would say the thing for me that's cool to watch is that the majority of the time, if we have a 1-hour call, is spent on the dream phase. That is a phase that doesn't even exist in most planning processes. A lot of planning processes are just write down what you need to get done, and then maybe you put it on the calendar, maybe you put it on a to-do list. It's pretty basic, right? For this, we spend a majority of our time thinking about where are we at? What do we need? What are all the different areas of our life that need attention? What do I really want? What does success look like for me? What are my priorities right now? How might that look different from last week's priorities versus next week's priorities? You give yourself space for all of those types of questions, and it's just a great process to take people through. And you can see the energy that people have as they're coming to this and they're working on it, and everyone's working on their own life. And it's such a cool space to be in. Anytime I find that people are doing the same type of work, but they're doing it for themselves, there's an energy in the room that just feels really cool. It's just awesome because everyone's in the same boat. We all have different life experiences, different challenges, different responsibilities, but we're all doing that work at the same time. And it's just really neat. So that's when we get through the dream process. Then we move into the decide process. So this is where we start to learn some of those really powerful agency things, like what's mine and what's not mine. What do I have control over? What don't I have control over? We start to get into some of that. And that takes a little time. Don't worry. Don't show up your first week and think you're going to have all of these revelations. You might, but it might take a little time. But that process is so powerful, the decide process, because so many of us are on a hamster wheel of to-do list items that just never ends. And we feel we have no control over it. And it can feel really disheartening. And so this decide process is really powerful because we look at all the things we've come up with, all the things we've dreamed about, all the things we've brainstormed, and we make some decisions on what's most important right now and what's a more longer term thing and what's a immediate, I have to get this done right away. And then we still allow ourselves a little freedom to say, well, do I need to get support? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to just take the authority to just say, this isn't getting done right now. This is not important. We've got all of that flexibility in there.
Yeah.
And then, and then the very last thing that takes the shortest amount of time is just putting stuff on the calendar. Yeah. We do that at the end. And so it's just such a cool cycle that we go through, and then it becomes familiar and you don't have to remember any of it because the calls are all guided. And I use my time timer, as you mentioned before, that visual timer. And right now it's either myself or Christine, and we lead those calls so that we could say, hey, now it's time to move to this. If you're still working, that's okay. Wrap up what you're doing there. Now we're going to move to this step. Now ask yourselves these questions. So it's a guided experience in the sense that you don't have to memorize the questions to ask and how all the tools work. You just show up and we take you through. And so that's how the process works in the actual membership. And I know I'm talking about kind of those weekly calls. I don't know if there's anything that you would mention in addition to what I talked about, maybe when you're thinking about the other time frames that we do or anything like that.
I think that the bigger the time frame, the more the dream. The smaller the time frame, the more boots on the ground, the more nitty gritty, the more do phase, as we call it, using calendars and lists. But the larger the time frame, whether you're starting the process and saying, who am I in the world? What did I receive from my heritage? And what do I want my legacy to be? Versus, what do I want for this year? We go really broad and we get even more narrow sometimes. But the bigger we're thinking, the longer the time frame, the more dreaming we're doing. And then the closer we get to a quarter, a month, a week, or a day, then we get into more doing, if that makes sense. So that's really the way I've designed it. And it makes sense if you're going to do these big visioneering moments for your life, you do that. But with Think Time, we never put those on a shelf. We always put them into the calendar. And so there's always all steps in my process. I started by creating a goal achievement process that helped people to overcome the obstacles to their dreams. And when I developed it and added in the productivity pieces and spiced in some psychologically sound pieces, and then threw in some mindfulness and, kind of mixed it up to make this really good cookie dough batch, I was like, this has to land in your real life. And so that's why we have the do phase. And so calling it a planner is the best way I know to say this isn't, it's actually a planner. It actually helps you create your plans. But most planners only have the grids, the lines, the calendars. And so if you are skipping the review, the dream, and the decide phases, then all you're doing is repeating your habits week after week after week. It is not about the do phase. The do phase is where you write down the decisions you made in the reviewing of your life, the dreaming, and then the deciding the fastest and easiest way to get there. Those are the real life-changing steps. And then the do phase, while important too, like if you don't schedule it, it's probably not going to happen. If you're just scheduling things from your hip or from your thoughts, you're thinking the same thoughts you thought yesterday. So you're going to continue to get the same results. So I think that's the second point I would make. So the first thing is dreaming big for larger timeframes. The second thing is if you're not doing this full dream, decide, do, review process, you are likely going to continue your same habits and patterns for the next 4 or 5 decades. This is an opportunity where that doesn't have to be your story. And if there are some things that you do want to change, there were for me. There were things in my life when I launched Think Time Planner, I knew I am not, I haven't become the person that is worthy of this process yet, but I used the process to become the person that I needed to be to lead this into the world. And so I started as a different person than I am today. It was 10 years ago. And I've been able to have a personal journey alongside developing the business that I was very self-aware. I am not who I need to be to lead this, but I can tell I have a calling to become that kind of person. And so that's been my journey. And then Bekah, I've watched you over the last 6 years have your own transformation journey. I just get to walk alongside you as you're doing your own path. I'm not telling you what to do, really. I just the system that you use and you're creating your own momentum over there. I'm not making anything happen for you. It's just the system that helps us all. So I'm growing with the system, you're growing with the system, and then we're watching every week people show up and we're watching these same transformation paths in front of us.
Yeah.
Moving from this stress cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline to what I would call calm confidence and peaceful productivity. And so, and really being who we are made to be and doing what we're meant to do better. And so, have we arrived at perfection? Absolutely not. Do we still have things to find? Yes. And we find those in the review phase every week when we show up for ourselves, right? We're like, oh, this is
Absolutely.
not working well. This is working well. What am I going to tweak? I'm going to double down on what's working, do less of what's not, try again next week. And so it's very great. It's a very gracious process, very shame-free process. You can show up for as much or as little as time allows, your life allows, your season allows. And whatever you invest, you're likely to increase your opportunity to get the results that you are hoping for because it works. And it's not because I made it up. I just noticed what's working, put it together, and hand it out. So that's the dream, decide, do, review process. And it's happening every week in our Think Time membership. And Bekah, you are currently coaching every week there. And then I hop in usually monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And it's beautiful. So I would like to invite everyone listening to hop in. So is there anything you'd add before we wrap up on the dream, do, review framework?
I just hope you'll have me back again because every time we get together, I want to say a lot of things, but I think you summed it up really well.
Okay, so this next episode is on the science of clarity, why you're stuck and how to get unstuck. So I will bring some teaching around clarity, how to find it, and how clarity can help you cut through the noise of our distracting modern world with or without ADHD. You can just be a human in 2026, or you can have ADHD and need to fight through the distractions of this world. But I will say in one word, the thing that I think Time offers is clarity. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and isn't a substitute for individualized medical, mental health, or professional care. Every brain is different. Results will vary.
Thank you for listening to Hyperfocus and High Performance. If today's conversation helped you think differently about how your mind works, I invite you to take the next step. Visit think-time.com/podcast and grab my free training, Why Can't I Find a Planner That Works for Me? If you've ever felt frustrated, judged, even by yourself, overwhelmed, or simply wondered why everyone seems to be able to follow a system that simply doesn't work for you, you're not alone. In this free training, you'll discover how your brain naturally approaches focus, planning, and productivity, and why many traditional systems were never designed for minds like yours, and whether neuroplanning could help you increase your opportunity to experience more clarity, calm, confidence, creativity, and meaningful progress with peace, not pressure. And if this episode encouraged you, please subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review so more brilliant, creative ADHD visionaries can discover what's possible. Remember, you don't have to become someone else to do what only you can do, because only you can be who only you can be, and otherwise there will be a hole in history. The path forward is clear. Love your design, then dream, decide, do, review. I'll see you next time.